Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order this. I'd like to call to order this Monday, June 26, 2023 meeting of the Pierce County Council and Monday study session. Time is 11:01 a.m. All members are present except for Councilmembers Denson and Morrell. This brings us to item 2, review of the June 27th, 2023 council meeting agenda. Ms. Long.
Thank you and good morning. This is the June 27th council agenda. It is amended. We'll begin with your consent agenda. Under C, action on resolutions, you have a few items here. First is our 2023-98, and this is confirming the appointment of a new member to the Pierce County Citizens Commission on Salaries for Elected Officials. That's for final. Next is, in addition, this is our 2023-104. This is calling for an election to be held on November 7th, 2023, to submit to the voters a determination of whether or not to establish a Sumner Library Capital Facility area to finance a new library in the city of Sumner. If this looks familiar, it is. The other one you did was for the primary. So this is for referral to rules, and you'll be setting the final on this for July 18th. Number 3 is our 2023-105. This is declaring certain tax titled lands to be sold. This is for referral to rules, and you'll be setting the final on this for July 18th as well. Under section 6, you'll note that the executive did sign 2023-19, which is the amendments to your rules of procedure. So we'll move to section 7. You have one item here. It's our 2023-99, and this is recognizing Dr. Chen for his over 14 years of exemplary service to the community in Pierce County. And Councilmember Hitchen will be reading that one. Under section 8 ordinances, you have one item. It's it's 2023-16, and this is granting a non-exclusive franchise to the town of Eatonville for the location of sewer lines. This received a due pass at Economic Infrastructure Development on June 13th. And moving to section 9 resolutions, you have one item here. That's our 2023-95, and this is adopting a new organization chart for the Office of the Council. This received a due pass recommendation at rules on June 20th. And those are your agenda items for tomorrow afternoon's regular council meeting.
Thank you. And there are no amendments or no amendments that we are aware of at this time, and no grant reports that we are requested to consider at this time. Are there any questions about the amended meeting agenda for tomorrow, June 27th? Not seeing any. That brings us to item 3, review of committee agendas for the week. Ms. Long.
All right, thank you. So this afternoon at 1:30, there is a Public Safety Committee meeting. There's one presentation and 2 presentations, excuse me. The first is a juvenile court update. That will be with TJ Bowl, the juvenile court administrator. And next is the report of the prosecutors, and that will be with Mary Robnett and Katie Blinn. Tomorrow morning at 9:30, you have an Economic Infrastructure Development Committee meeting. There is one presentation and one proposal for consideration. First is the Vision Zero Action Plan update. That will be with Melissa McFadden from Planning and Public Works. And the proposal is our 2023-101. This is identifying street lighting and other neighborhood traffic projects for funding pursuant to a proviso in the budget. And this has a July 11th final hearing date.
I'm the only member not signed on as a sponsor. It's not because I don't like traffic lighting. Just for the record, we have 6 members signed on as a sponsor. I'm glad there's so much enthusiasm about street lighting.
I've been saying it.
Well, we each
I've
turned
been
in.
saying
Sure,
it's
Campbell.
I've been saying it's a high priority of the entire council for some time. Which is why I think we need to develop a larger plan.
Ms. Long.
All right, thank you. So tomorrow at noon is your regular Tuesday noon study session. You do have a couple of additional items from the usual agenda. Under Chair's Topics, there's an update on the council agenda format. We talked a little bit about the set rules today, but more tomorrow. And then under other business, there are 2 items. The first is the DEI update. That will be with Judy Archer, HR Director, and then an executive session. And at 3 p.m. is your regular council meeting. On Wednesday, June 28th at 10 a.m. is a performance audit committee meeting. And you have 2 updates on this agenda. The first is a project update. This is on the domestic and gender-based violence study. And the second is an update on state legislation on police pursuits. And that is the meeting schedule for the remainder of this week.
Thank you. Are there questions about the committee agendas for this week? Not seeing any. That brings us to item 4, discussion of administrative items. Ms. Long, are there any?
Not today, thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to other business. We are really grateful to be joined by leaders of the Black Home Initiative. Can I start with Kevin to start with the introduction? I know we have Ms. Jasmine Jefferson online as well. Mr. Hunter will invite you to the podium to first welcome you. Thank you for your leadership and your work with the consortium in Puget Sound on this really important work. We're excited to learn more about what partners have been doing to help build generational wealth and specifically help reduce the racial wealth gap. And I know you have some friends online who are going to help with the presentation. So let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I want to, it's great to be here. We're honored to present and give you all an update. The main presenter will be Ms. Jasmine Jefferson. She owns a realty business. I guess the new word is realtist business in Pierce County. And she's on our core team for the BHI initiative. And so she'll be leading the presentation, and I'll chime in where I can be helpful. So I'll turn it over to Jasmine, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Ms. Jefferson, welcome.
Hi, good morning, Council. Thank you so much for having us here. Who is going to be progressing the slides so I know who to talk to?
You just say next slide and we'll progress it for you
Okay.
when you're prepared.
Excellent, thank you. Next slide, please. So Jasmine Jefferson, designated broker owner, Windermere Abode, Lakewood. We are a small business. We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary last Thursday. I have been a realtor for 20 years and a realtist member for 3 years. And if you're wondering what the difference is, commonly known, realtors is part of the National Association of Realtors. In 1947, a group of Black men who were not allowed to be realtors formed the National Association of Real Estate Brokers and then formed realtist members. So I'm both a realtist and realtor member. Also the incoming president for Tacoma Pierce County Association of Realtors. So I say that to say that I'm very much entrenched in the outcome of this. Also as a woman of color and the owner of a firm. Next slide, please. In 2021, there was the birth of an idea of how do we bring together all of the different factions of people working on the initiative to increase Black home ownership. And so how to put that in a more strategic pipeline was the real brainchild of getting this going. So March 2021, there was the first roundtable, and you'll see that throughout 2022, which is where I got involved, where we met with the Tacoma Council and folks from the Civic Commons and really looked at the data and wanted to see if there was enough support and partners to get behind the Black Home Initiative, and would a network actually be plausible. Next slide, please. So I'm going to make an assumption that some of this data is not new to the council. I heard that you have a DEI committee, and my guess is that you guys are focused on and learning a lot of information about what's happening in housing. So this slide here is from 2015 to 2019, and you'll see that the color blocks represent different sections of where folks are in the home ownership process. So the teal, that is the share of unready renter households. And the goldenrod is the share of ready renter households, meaning they're in the process, they have their down payment and they're ready to go. And then the royal blue, those are the owner households. So you'll see there's quite a bit of difference between the renters and folks that are actually ready. Next slide, please. So when we look at the trajectory of the different groups, on the top column here, we have AAPI, which is Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, AIAN, American Indian and Alaska Native, Black, Other, and White. And you'll see that the trajectory is going up for all of those groups, with the exception of Black. So this is something that we're definitely taking a look at. We know that the state is taking a look at this, the governor, and also the state chamber. Next slide, please. A lot of questions that we'll get from people when we're talking about this is what's the problem, or how did we get here? Why is there disparity? Why can't Black people just do what everybody else does? And so taking a look at this third column, BIPOC home ownership rates lower at every income level, there's obviously a pattern here that no matter what the income level is, the home ownership rates are lower. So there's definitely a pattern. And in the third column, where you talk about disparities in net worth, no matter what the net worth is and how it goes up, or I apologize, how it stays below zero, you still have that separation for Black or African Americans, as well as Hispanics and Latinx. Next slide, please. So the Black Home Initiative, I don't know where the committee has come into being presented with BHI, if this is your first presentation or a readback, but the Black Home Initiative is a group of nonprofit organizations that all work in housing. Some of them provide counseling, some of them provide down payment assistance. There's some seed funding from money from JP Morgan Chase to assist with the programming that comes out of this group. And then I mentioned Civic Commons earlier. They're the organization that was the convening group to get this really going and to bring all the partners together for the core group. Kevin, do you have anything to add at this time before we go on?
Yeah, I thanks, Jasmine. Yeah, I think it's, so Seattle Tacoma is part of a 5-city initiative that JP Morgan Chase has funded to start this initiative in those 5 places. One of the things, the Civic Commons group comes out of the Seattle Foundation, but the leadership of the Seattle Foundation was very clear that this needed to include Pierce County. And so it was upfront, it didn't want to be a Seattle Foundation thing. And as a Tacoma resident, we didn't want to get the scraps of what was left over from an initiative that was focused out of Seattle. So from the jump, it's been very equitable in terms of the kinds of resources that are flowing to the Pierce County group and the organizations down here. And so it's thrilled, and we'll talk a little bit more about the network, but let me just add a little bit to what Jasmine said. It's also the for-profit space as well. We think that it's not just the nonprofit housing developers that are going to address and solve this issue. It's got to be a collective effort from the nonprofit developers, the for-profit developers, with a special emphasis in helping the minority-led, the BIPOC, the Black developers and organizations that to be a part of this, to see it successfully through. So I'll turn it back to you, Jasmine.
Thank you. And part of what Kevin's talking about, the role Kevin and I have played together, is how do we bring together the real estate professionals, because you have different levels of gatekeeping to home ownership. You have to have a mortgage if you don't have capital to pay cash. You have to find a trusted professional who's going to lead you in the right direction, make sure that you have a home inspection and can help qualify you as a prospective buyer. And then finding folks as far as developers, when you look at minority or Black developers, those are scattered out even more. And so when you look at the nonprofit space and capital, or I apologize, the for-profit space and capital, you see even less of that in the Black development sector. And that's something that Kevin and I are working on, is how do we get all of these folks talking to themselves? And if you take a look at the website for BHI, you'll notice there's only 2 real estate companies listed on there, because it's easier to just set up shop and sell houses and make as much money as possible. But what's not easy is doing, how do you shrink the gap of home ownership? How do you prop up and try to make home ownership equitable? Next slide, please. So the BHI network is implementing the Center for Community Investment Capital Absorption Framework. We look at our shared priorities, we take a look at the pipeline, and how do we create an enabling environment. And hopefully you all have this packet available to you. Has it all been emailed out to the council?
We do have it.
Excellent. Next slide, please. Something that encouraged me about this process, because I'm a lifelong Pierce County resident, and as I mentioned, 20 years in real estate, we see people talking often about, okay, let's go do this. Let's start this. I have this great idea. Why aren't we doing these things? And having the rubrics there to follow and check and balance the outcomes that we're looking at, you don't always see that. And here with BHI, they really have taken, I should say we really have taken a look at what outcomes and how are we measuring success, and how do we make alterations, or if we're moving faster, are we missing anything? You'll see that we have some timelines here that we hope to accomplish. And I tell you, we have a lot of meetings, and we take a look at all of these things, and we break our cohort down. King County, Tacoma Pierce County meets separately, and then we get together as a large group to go over and really make sure that we're staying on track with all of these planned outcomes. Next slide, please. So here we have stated the question, how can we significantly scale the number of Black homeowners in order to achieve our shared priority? And next up, you have the 3 core elements of what we're looking at. And what I hope that you will take from this graphic is a clear understanding that this is a very intentional, well thought out, well choreographed process that we have really tried to look at every single angle to support all of the core initiatives that are set out here. So increased supply of affordable homes to purchase. You'll see, for example, there's another 3 levels to this, which then goes on to another 6 levels. So it never stops. There's continuous exploration of who do we need to have participate in this, and making sure that all the steps are thought of. There's been a lot of discussion about what have the barriers been for these housing groups, or I'm sorry, the groups of folks that are being left out of the housing discussion. Next slide, please. So in getting close to the end of this, I feel like this picture really represents what we have been experiencing, which is what we hope to look less like, which is a small flock, and really taking a larger group of people. And there's an African proverb that says, many hands make for light work. And that's definitely something that I see and witness often with the Black Home Initiative. The website work, coming together as Black real estate professionals and being able to work on a website that speaks to the actual process that a home buyer would go through, and making sure that the real estate professionals that would be approved to assist people really understand all of this information and how special it is to be able to assist in this process. So I can't speak more highly of this particular initiative. I've worked on a few over the years, and this has been the most organized that I have seen. Next slide, please. And based on that, when people are deciding whether or not to join in support of, there's a page on the website that has all of the people's names or company and organizations names on it. And I know that our request to the Pierce County Council is that you sign on as a supporter of the initiative, and lending your name to understanding the importance of supporting Black home ownership in Pierce County, and knowing that that will spread. And what I see as a real estate professional is that the more that we work on this initiative and the type of work that we are doing, it is going to spread out beyond Black home ownership, and it will increase the accessibility to housing to much more than that group based off of this work. But our priority definitely is to shrink that gap for Black home ownership. So we do leave you with this quote from BHI core team member, Nicole Bascom Green. She is a good friend of mine. She's also the president of Western Washington Realtist. And she definitely believes in the aspirational joint effort of coming together for this. So with that, I will see if you have any questions, and also still propose the question of, will you say yes to supporting and signing on to BHI? I don't know if that's appropriate or not right now, but I'm gonna ask it anyways.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson. Thank you for asking the Pierce County Council's involvement and support of the principles of the Black Home Initiative. I'll turn it over. We'll get you an answer, but thank you for being here to present and allow us to ask some questions so that we can be well-informed and good ambassadors of the work. Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. And Jasmine, thank you and Kevin, thank you for all the information on this. Actually learned a lot. I'd heard the term realtist, but I didn't quite understood what it meant. So thank you for the education today. Always an opportunity to learn about, well, really our history that helped bring us there, which helped bring us to what we're looking at here today. So I hear your request to sign on. And I was just curious as to what that means. When we do that, how does that help you?
So the recognition that the county is behind us is a big deal. We've got the Tacoma City Council. We're working on different realtor associations. It lends credibility to the work that's been put together. There's no financial ask specifically for signing on as a supporter. It is acknowledging the program, acknowledging the work. And I do believe there's even a disclaimer that says these participants, and these are not the exact words, either agree to all or some of the initiatives proposed here. So we do know, for instance, myself as an owner, there may be some conflicts with my role being held to abide by, I don't know, fair housing. So people may question, how can I, as a real estate licensee, say that we need to increase Black home ownership and not say specifically for all? And that disclaimer down there helps out with that. And I'm able to, still focus on the work. Kevin looks like he has something to add to that.
Let me just add, I think it's a partner pledge. There's no specific, there's no cost to it. There's no commitments other than to be in support. We're trying to leverage as many for-profit, nonprofit, government entity to say we're trying to build the momentum. You obviously know this is a big, wicked problem, and it's very, very complex, and we're trying to look at solutions that are systemic. One of the questions I would imagine you would be asking is, well, why just Black folks? And when you look at the data, we're trying to say, let's take the most difficult challenge and try and raise that disparity out of existence. And by doing that, we're also going to raise the other boats that are not at the level that any of us want them to be at. So we're trying to, focus here, change the systems, get the right people involved, and then it'll ultimately create for a more vital, more stable, and appropriate community that we all want to live in.
And if I could add to that real quick, once you sign on as a partner, you will become more aware of the work. You'll have more access to the information through emails, and hopefully, if there's ever an instance that the county has something going on, making sure that we're cohesive in our efforts, whether it's sharing information, maybe there's something going on somewhere else, and that cross communication can benefit all parties is important as well.
Thank you. And thank you for your work on this. I think many times people believe that when we stopped using the redlining maps that discrimination in housing ended because we didn't have the map anymore. The map was just a very visible point of discrimination. I know it's been going on for a long time since then. For about 4 years, I had the honor of being the community association manager for our Salishan community, of which a third of the homes in there are home ownership. A lot of people don't realize that's mixed income, mixed ownership. And I would have to, as they would come in, I would sign them up to be part of our community association, have an opportunity to talk with the home buyers who were moving in. And probably at least a dozen times, maybe more, of homeowners who had bought in there, particularly white homeowners, saying they were discouraged to look in that area because they didn't believe sometimes the verbiage was always different, but this may not be the right area for you. Think about your kids. And they were almost in every case offered another home to look at in another part of the city. I signed up hundreds, so I don't want to make it sound like it was dozens out of 25. It was, but those are the ones who also felt comfortable sharing the story with me. But this is within the last 10 years that we still were seeing a more passive discrimination in where people should look to live. And if you're a realtor who might say this community might not be right for a white home buyer, how are they treating our Black home buyers?
Exactly.
So when they're having an open house and the Black family comes in, are they going to treat them the same? We hope that they do. Standards say that they should. The data says they do not. So thank you for this work. It's incredibly important. I think if we open it up, we could find hundreds of stories within the last 3 years of this still very actively happening in our communities. Thank you. I would be, I would hope the council can be supportive. If not, I absolutely am. So you can add that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Campbell. Councilor Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Hunter and Ms. Jefferson. This sounds like a wonderful initiative, and it sounds like the partnership. I love when we have partnerships going on across different avenues, because a lot of times when you have really heavy and important work, having partnerships helps. My question is around the actual, like the program part of it. I feel like I kind of missed that in the presentation. Is that something, if I were to go on your website, I could learn a little bit more just about what you do?
Yeah, so we're still actually putting that piece together. So you're
Okay.
coming in at the end of us getting our partnerships going, really going through the data, really making sure that we understand collectively what those barriers are before we start jumping into creating. So there is a consumer facing portal that will be in the website. I do believe it is live, and there's going to be housing counselors There's access even for, we're looking at how do you keep people in their home. So it won't just be for first-time home buyers. We're really looking at how to sustain home ownership as well. So if you're elderly and you need repairs done to your home, how do you have access to that as well? But the primary piece is, how does a buyer go in and feel comfortable and confident in understanding what that process looks like to them? And that's what the website is going to be for. And there will be partners. So for instance, I mentioned real estate licensees, because they're not all realtors, who are stepping up to say, I agree to abide by these standards of representing buyer clients. Those people will be available through the website for the consumers. And it's extremely important what that experience is like for that home buyer, because what we also want to have happen, we know that if it's a good experience, they're going to talk about it. And they're going to tell their friends, they're going to talk to their children about it. They're going to talk to their parents who maybe never thought homeownership was an option. So we want the experience to be so top tier that it spreads out from them. And that's part of the goal.
Let me also add that, yeah, that chart that had the kind of the 3 core issues and then the workflow process, that really begins to get a little bit more of the detail. So, you know, there's a whole, we've got to get land put together. We got to get, you know, permits in process. We got to get shovels in the ground. And that's going to mean a whole bunch of different levels of activity, working with the council here, working with the cities to make sure we're trying to fill that pipeline of units. And it's not going to be a one size fits all type of product, right? It's going to be ADUs, it's going to be walk-ups, townhomes, single family, et cetera. On the buyer readiness, that's the second big piece of work. How do you get, if we get all these people trying to build a bunch of homes and no one is ready and able to buy them, we're going to have a problem, right? So there's this whole bunch of workflow process steps for how do we get the word out that this initiative is there. So it's, you know, working with the urban leagues, the, you know, sound partners, everybody kind of at all the levels to make sure they're aware of the opportunities, the housing counselors that are going to be available, the down payment assistance programs, the debt remediation fund, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that is in process. And then we've got to figure out how in the world are all of these for-profit, nonprofit, you know, city and county officials, how are we all going to work together and get on the same page? And that's the ecosystem part that we're just trying to, that Jasmine, I think, really well articulated. We just got to get the network together, build the trust. Long gone are the days where one organization, one heroic leader is going to walk in and say, thus, you know, let it be. It's got to be a very deep and holistic collaborative ecosystem. If we're going to change systemic issues, you know, to your point, you got to get everybody top to bottom, bottom up, top down on the same page and working together. So we can certainly get you more information on what are all the specific kind of programmatic functions that are hitting the end user and the developer and the potential homeowner, the bankers. You know, it's just it's a wonderfully integrated and deeply challenging process to go through, as you could imagine.
Yes, you didn't pick an easy path here, but
No.
so
And luckily,
overdue in
our
our
timing was really good with interest rates going up.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah, so I think my only, so I think this is a wonderful idea and would be interested to figure out how we sign on or show support. Just housing and homelessness is a huge priority for the county. And one of the things that happens with our Black homeownership discrepancies, as in they don't have access to housing from all the different reasons, is they don't have a parent that owned a home, and all the things that created barriers for that community is a problem. It's lack of education, not because they weren't able to go get an education, it's they didn't have a pot of money sitting in a house to then afford to go to school. And so there's that generational poverty that just continues because we don't have a home. And they don't have a parent that's gone through that process. They don't have a parent who owned a home, repaired a home, kept a home. They didn't do that. They rented or they lived in different situations, whatever worked for them, but they haven't seen it personally. And so that's with home ownership. I love that you're kind of looking at it, not just let's get a home. It's the skills and the supports to make it successful. You're kind of thinking about all the different impacts, which again, those partnerships are so important. So really love that that's what you're talking about doing, is bringing all of it together so that we really can tackle the generational problem that has been created by systemic racism. So you didn't pick something easy, but I really appreciate that you're taking it on, both of you and all the partners that are involved. So thank you.
May I comment? I don't know if that's appropriate.
Of course,
I
go
would
ahead.
like to point out that this initiative is also going to help those that do have an education,
Yeah,
do have the
absolutely.
finances that are still hitting barriers. And so we're looking at all of it. It's not just the first time home buyers and folks that have not generationally had home ownership in their family. It is even looking at the higher income. How do we, if we know that Black women have the highest rate of student loans out there, and they're the breadwinners primarily, how do we get them into homes when they're carrying so much student loan debt? So there's a lot of different pieces to that. And I hope that through our presentation, you see that we are looking at every single angle for this.
Thank you for following up with that. And that the graph that you shared that had the different income levels was also, I need to look at it again, but it surprised me when I looked at it the first time. And again, biases that we naturally have. So thank you for correcting and sharing that.
Thank you. Ms. Jefferson, this is definitely a conversation between you and Mr. Hunter, the presenters and the council. So please do keep interjecting and responding and bringing your ideas to this conversation.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Coover.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. It's very informative. And capital absorption was a new term I hadn't heard of before, but I see that the Harvard Kennedy School has done articles since 2012, and the Lincoln Institute for Land Policy has made that. And I'm wondering if there is an area that you are modeling this after that has already implemented this kind of plan that we could maybe look at.
Jasmine,
From how I understand it, and just so you understand, I am a partner in this, and so I have not studied it in depth as Civic Commons has. But the way that I understand it is we're taking bits and pieces, because if it was successful somewhere else already, we would be able to implement that and move forward with it. So I think I understand your question is if there's a successful model. I understand that we are trying to create the successful model, and Kevin may have something different to add to that.
yeah, I think there is some historic work that's been modeled after in terms of what the Center for Community Investment, which is basically the national group that is pushing its model down and out across those 5 cities I mentioned earlier. We've actually, and I can follow up with the council in terms of what specifically those initiatives or endeavors have been and where. We have taken a tack here in the Seattle-Tacoma area that is very much more network weaved, much more of a collaborative approach. Let's take a little bit longer time on the front end to get all the critical players together that can absorb this capital that's hitting the streets, so that it can be ultimately a better longer term investment. And that's one of the things that a model like this, multiple cities can be looking at. You know, DC is doing it a little bit differently than LA and some of the other places, but we've taken the approach to say the only way this is gonna produce the kind of impact and the outcomes that we are interested in is through a strategy that really engages the institutions, the relationships, the community at all levels. And so there's going to be some data that comes out of that, how our model has compared to some of the other 4 sites around the country that are endeavoring to do the Black Home Initiative. So, but I can get you some information on how that model is that we've been given is where it came from and some of the background on it.
Okay, I would appreciate
Yeah.
having that knowledge. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Herrera.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Jefferson. This is a great information. I have a couple of questions, but I'm gonna go right to one of the graphs we had here was the disparities in net worth part of it. And 42% Black and 20% Hispanic have households of 0 net worth. I'm asking like specifically, what does that mean? Does that mean like there's no money coming in or
debt.
what do you?
So when you look at your net worth and you look at your assets, there's just no net worth there. So you may only have $1,000 in your checking account. You're living paycheck to paycheck. You don't own your vehicle outright.
Okay. And okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarity. And what Councilmember Hitchen was touching on about kind of maybe a culture of home ownership really pays off leaps and bounds. And this whole conversation reminds me of conversations I had with my grandparents who came to this country from another country. And when they first came here, they did have neighborhoods where you could not move into, and they had to move into Boyle Heights. And this is in the Los Angeles area, and they had to, in Boyle Heights, Jews, Japanese, Hispanics, Blacks, that's the only neighborhood you can live in. And they lived there for many years. And I remember they're talking to me about how that was. And then how when they built I-5 and 405, they put that right in the middle of that neighborhood and split that whole neighborhood up, and they had to move. But as time went on, and they got out of that and things changed, I think in the 40s or 50s, somehow they bought their first house in East Los Angeles. And that, whatever they did, I don't know the whole story, but whatever they did, having that home ownership, my dad learned how to do it. He got his home ownership, and then it kind of went off to me. So there is a culture of having a home already purchased that helps with that. But I really appreciate you bringing this up. Brings back memories of conversations from my family, and that there's still work to do. And thank you very much.
Thank you for those reflections, Councilmember Herrera, and clarifying the slide about net worth. That is a very daunting statistic you brought forward to us, Mr. Hunter and Ms. Jefferson. I do have just a couple of questions as we do build our understanding. Very appreciative of the private sector here, private nonprofit community and the private for-profit community working together to build this Black Home Initiative network outside of the government system. Thank you for working so hard to build this ecosystem, these resources and this brainpower and partnership. It's very exciting to see the nonprofit and for-profit community come together and do this. I just wanted to state very clearly, earlier this year, I think both of you know this, Ms. Jefferson, you were quite involved. Earlier this year, on March 21st, the Pierce County Council approved the Maureen Howard Affordable Housing Act. It's a new dedicated revenue stream, 0.1% of the sales tax going to affordable housing. And explicitly in that ordinance that the council approved, we specifically stated that one of our primary objectives is to address the racial wealth gap, the net worth gap that we were just talking about. That is a stated priority in the adopted ordinance by council to reduce the racial wealth gap. And home ownership opportunities is a stated eligible investment in the Maureen Howard Affordable Housing Act. So I see this Black Home Initiative, again, brought to us by for-profit and nonprofit partners as a vessel to one of hopefully many initiatives that come forward that we can be a part of, it, lending the council's credibility and partnership embedding the resources that you are bringing to the table and building as private partners to our housing division at county government. The Maureen Howard Affordable Housing Act is going to be leveraged. We envision it being leveraged with initiatives like yours. I think this is wholly consistent with what we envisioned when we approved the Maureen Howard Affordable Housing Act. So wholly consistent in my mind. I wanted to ask about the data just real quickly. Many of us are very interested in outcomes, and I love that you have some stated goals for success looking out into the near term. The first goal of 1,500 new Black-owned homes, and then 3,000. I think it's year 2030. I don't have the slide right in front of me, but it's in the relatively near term. For those of us that don't do what you do, Ms. Jefferson, how do we track that? How do you get it? You're not the only realtor.
Right.
How do we know if we're meeting those outcomes or not?
That specific question for tracking has been one that has been coming up since we started talking about this. So the best way that we can track it is getting people to the portal, following the success rate, if they close or not, and what that looks like. Also getting more partners involved and taking a look at it, because when we're doing a transaction, I'm definitely not checking a box that says what the ethnic or racial makeup is of the client on either side of the transaction. And you can even opt out of that question when you're getting a mortgage. So it's really going to have to be about the people that are participating and sharing data and collecting it that way is where we're at right now. But that is an ongoing goal for us. I'm not going to say that it's a challenge, because we believe that there's an answer to it. We just have to get to it.
Thank you for that.
Let me just add to that, Mr. Chairman. The portal that Jasmine mentioned is really critical. It's the Washington Housing Resource Center is developing a new portal that hopefully will track a whole bunch of this stuff, both on the buyers that are coming in looking to get some support, and they get followed all the way through. So that'll be huge. And then the BHI initiative is actually working on developing a scorecard that the leadership team and all the network partners will have access to. And yeah, you got to start. And I'm assuming you all know this, that the Pierce County Housing Authority has recently turned over 80 of 120 homes that are being repurposed. And Habitat for Humanity Tacoma Pierce County has taken 80 of those, and those will be turned into home ownership units as well. So it's, as Jasmine said, it's partners that are involved, being intentional, making sure that information comes back, gets on the dashboard and in the Washington Resource Center portal, so that we can have the kind of data that we can rely on and track our progress.
And that's a living example. Habitat for Humanity is a partner. They are at the table with BHI and have been since the beginning. So they're also going to be tracking these numbers as well. And I would like to point out before we wrap up, having your name on this, and we know that there's a national spotlight on what BHI is doing here, because Los Angeles has looked at what we're doing. Houston has looked at what we're doing. Other cities and states and counties are looking at what we are doing. So if they see the process of having county councils, city councils, different nonprofit organizations, then hopefully the hope is they will bring those together in a similar fashion in their areas as well. So that example piece is very important to us.
Thank you. Well, thank you for explaining the initiative to the full county council. We know you're actively building it. We're in the early years, but the work is urgent. So while there's more to come, as you build out all the resources to be made available to consumers and community members. I'm hearing lots of excitement and enthusiasm. So let's follow up about the paperwork, about what it takes for Pierce County. and Pierce
So
County Council.
easy.
Good, thank you for making it
So
easy.
easy.
Well, thank you for what the council's doing in support of these kinds of important housing issues. So I appreciate it. Any closing words, Jasmine?
Just thank you all for your thoughtful questions. It makes me happy to hear that there's interest here. I think over the years, coming up against roadblocks and some of the questions that I've faced while doing this work have been very disheartening. I don't feel that here in this space. And, you know, I purchased my grandparents' home who were steered into a Black-only community. My grandfather was not allowed to use the GI Bill to purchase his home, so I understand a lot of this historically in my family. I'm not just selling real estate. So your questions and thoughtfulness and hopefully your support of this, even if I'm just one person, it means a lot. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you for being with us, Ms. Jefferson. Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Appreciate it. We will work with you to follow up and look forward to the great success of the initiative in the months and years to come, and look forward to us being a partner in lots of different ways, and hopefully in more than just name only, as there are opportunities to partner in many different ways. But we'll start with the relationship building and the trust building and lending our credibility to the extent it's useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other, before we enter into an executive session this afternoon, is there any other business by members? Ms. Long, is there any other business for council and study session?
Not from staff, thank you.
Thank you. Could you please brief the purpose of the executive session?
We do that. All right, thank you. So this is an executive session authorized by RCW 4230-110-1I. The purpose is to discuss with legal counsel matters of pending or potential litigation to which the county is or may become a party, and to which public knowledge of the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the county. And as we usually do before the council goes into executive session, Mr. Chair, if you would state the time at which we will return for the public. And I will note that the only item on the agenda following executive session is adjournment. We have Mr. Campbell here. I don't know if you have a time estimate.
Did you say 15, Mr. Kemp? 15? So let's start at noon. We'll take a brief break. We'll start at noon and the council will be in executive session until 12:25 p.m. So we'll be at recess until 12:25. Thank you. The council is back from its executive session. The time is about 12:28 p.m. and seeing no further business before the Pierce County Council in Monday's study session, we are adjourned.